Yeah, it's been kind of a rivalry we've seen going a lot and talked about quite a bit. It kind of started in that TPL grand final a little bit ago before Element 3 started. And we've seen that play out many different times now. And I believe in everything except for Blitz Gaming Series, makers have come out on top. So we'll see if this is going to continue that trend or if we're going to buck that a little bit here. Is makers are going to be playing really well tonight as there's a lot of money on the line, but Ariel has been having some trouble.
Sorry about that. I accidentally muted myself there. But what I was kind of saying was these two teams generally have had a lot of great history between each other. They've had a lot of really great and close series, and they've actually played here in Game Rogue back in the Swiss stage, and it kind of lived up to that reputation of being a really close series. As it was an 8-7 victory, went in the way of Makers on Bank, but nonetheless, that still proves that at least the previous version of this Aerial Arise team was still very much capable of hanging with the top dogs.
Yeah, Ariel's never been bad, but unfortunately, they've just, especially recently, never really been good enough to beat the top dogs, although they do always give them a run for their money. I believe we do have the rosters up here, so we can kind of see what these two teams are looking like after we pull up Makers, which is Packer, Giddy, Bino, Tristan, and Adam. It is this new look Makers that we've seen quite a bit. Not what it once was with Woos and Kobe both missing, but Tristan and Adam have been admirable replacements for both of those players. And Adam, especially, has surprised me a lot, stepping into that entry role that he hasn't really played in a while and doing exceptionally well on it.
I would definitely agree with that statement that Adam has been an exceptional player for this Makers roster. We'll talk about him more in a little bit, but we got to take a look at Ariel Arise now. As like we mentioned, they've had a few changes to their roster. Of course, you've still got Snake and Brio sticking around, as well as Epic to keep that kind of general core of the team together. But they've brought in Nihilek and Uzi in their place. And those are two players that have kind of been around the block a lot in the T3 and T2 scene. They're very good players in their own right, and I'm really curious to see how they gel with this core.
What is interesting to me is that the IGL duo that Ariel once had of Inrio and Kiru has been evaporated as Inrio is on Thrive now, and Kiru is nowhere to be found. So we'll kind of see how the calling goes this game. And against a team like Maker specifically that is both strategically sound and just really, really talented with their mechanical skill, not having that calling structure is honestly something I could really see hurting Ariel here. Although they do have a lot of gunpowder of their own, we'll have to see if that kind of balances out some of that strategic depth they're going to be missing.
But looking at the really I do think the Vikings stand out first by Aaron Rodgers to advance. But Border, for Aaron Rodgers as their pick in the I don't like such good gun I feel like that might be a little bit of a red flag.
Could be a little bit of a red flag, but I think I kind of see the vision there. Is like I kind of talked about, they're not going to be as strategically sound this game just because they won't have that primary calling figure or calling figures like they did on the previous version of the roster. So they're going to be a lot more frag heavy here, right? With players like Snake and Uzi and Nihilek and Brios and Epic. They're all gunners. They all have super high levels of mechanical skill. And Border is a map that uh, can really reward that type of play, which you kind of want when you're going up against a team like Bakers that is almost certainly going to beat you strategically. You want to bring them to a battleground where you can kind of fight them with your gun skill.
circle back around. I want to circle back around here and talk a little bit more about Adam. I think.
So, unfortunately, my co-caster Nomical is having some issues with his microphone, so you're going to hear me yap on my own for a little bit until our producer tells us that things are good to go. We're going to send things to the game, though, just to kind of get that started, since, don't want to keep the players waiting around all night, nor do we want to keep you lovely people waiting all night for the game. Console, it's going to be our first battleground here, which is a map that we've seen Makers be quite good at for some time. Starting all the way back in Element, I believe, I've casted them. I can hear you. I have the vMix muted, so we'll see. All right. They're in another call, trying to sort that out. So we'll gonna see how that goes. But like I was saying, Consulate is a map that we've seen makers play quite a bit, and it's a map that really rewards the strategic depth that they have developed as a roster. And it's a map where Arial Rise could really be punished. They are going to start on the defense, so they do have that advantage going for them. And we're not using quarters, so they do have that going for them as well. That's 6 rounds in a row of that defense. But got to get into the bands here, and first we're going to have Ying banned out by Arial Arise. It's a band that makes a lot of sense, in my opinion, is that's a lot of execute utility, which against a team like Makers, they can do a lot with that. Monty as well, he's just really in a very powerful state right now, and a lot of teams just kind of don't want to deal with that, as he can kind of be a get out of jail free card sometimes. Azami's banned out as well, and she's just powerful on absolutely every map, absolutely any site. She can take a position and make it damn near impregnable just with the capability she can set up along with her kits, with her guns. Mira as well, kind of in the same vein as Azami, has the ability to reconstruct the way that some sites have to be played. And it's also an operator that we know makers really like to use on this map. So not having to deal with Mira kind of makes sense.
Well, Ali, I believe I am back. I was talking to our producer, and he says I am back. So we're just gonna roll with it and hope everything works. But looking at those bands, it's pretty much stock standard. I
Attackers need to
mean, there's
locate and
nothing
defuse as
really
many
crazy
bombs
that
as they
stands out to
can.
me. You've got the Monty, the zombie makes a lot of sense. And I think the Ying actually is a really good band by Arial Rise. A lot of times you see teams go for really aggressive takes, specifically on the top floor, and a Ying could be a huge enabler of that if you want to hop in something like the CEO window. So banning that out, while sure you're leaving operators like the Grim up that Dino's going to bring out here in round number 1, you really want to make sure that you have more options available for yourself, rather than having to focus specifically on dealing with something like a Ying.
Yeah, just with that
10 seconds
aggression that
remaining.
makers like to bring, when you have something like a Ying on the board that can really enable these
5
players to
seconds
get into
left.
awkward positions, and only the Warden can see through those comfortably,
Attackers
which
are
just
moving out to locate a bomb.
not a fight you want to be taking for sure. Like you said, though, that Grim being on the board is going to allow Bino a good bit of flexibility with dislodging these players, or even just burning things for other utility if that's the route he wants to go down. So there is still quite a bit of utility, which Arial are going to have to be wary of on this attack from Makers, but they have gotten rid of some of the big pieces.
Well, initially, nothing too crazy coming out from Makers just yet. They're barely even in the building, if in the building at all. They're mostly just sitting outside and gaining some initial information, specifically players like Giddy using that IQ scanner to try and figure out where some of these electrified gadgets are from Arial Arise. They're going to be able to get great value out of that IQ with something like the Solus being on the board from Epic. But not only that, you've got the Warden from Brios, and Giddy can kind of spot out where it is that the Warden is playing and keep Makers from actually throwing utility like flash grenades, like smokes if they were to have any. But they actually really don't have any of that in this round. So that Warden isn't going to be much of a factor to kind of slow down Makers' attack. So just overall, you can just use that IQ scanner to figure out where at least 2 of these players are.
Yeah, aside from just giving Brios a no-recoil gun and bringing a shield, the impact in regards to his glasses is going to be nullified quite a bit. Nylik and Epic on the first floor, though, can have quite a bit of impact. That Solus scanner receiving, I guess you could say, a mix of buffs and nerfs. She now has the ability to use her gadget more like IQ can, but she can still see through that floor, and so if Makers try to go for a plant here, she could absolutely deny it. We only have about a minute and 15 seconds left, though, so Makers are going to start to kind of poke at the site for an execute, especially with Giddy making his entry into Projector.
Well, the opening kill goes the way of Makers, but Arial arrives with two quick responses back to regain the man advantage for their own. And as we enter the final minute, they can kind of just sit back and force Makers to try and make a play. And while Makers are going to be more than happy to do that, they're playing from the disadvantage, which is definitely not a spot you want to be in on a long angled site like CEO here on the top floor. The time is slowly but surely ticking away, and so are Maker's chances in this round. They're trying to throw in some utility here and gain a little bit of a foothold into the map. Adam will be the first one in the building, but Bino actually will shut down Epic. Snake's there to trade onto Adam, so man advantage still for Arial Arise as Snake gets his third in the round. And now it's Bino all alone in a 1v3. Rios will walk right into his crosshairs. He'll do some damage, but a C4 from long range. Snake will blow Makers right out of that round. It's a 4K from Snake in round one, and Arial are on the board.
Yeah, that top floor can be a very, very difficult site to attack at the best of times. And Ariel had a very good setup for it, especially with where they had positioned their bodies when that actual execute was going down. They didn't leave any gaps unsolved. They knew exactly where Makers wanted to try to push in, and they just had people covering it. Snake, especially in a very good position over by that reception desk, was able to shut down multiple players completely on his own. Now we're going to see another, not another site rotation, a site rotation come out of Arial Arise to the basement, which this is going to be pretty typical for the site rotations on this map. And we're going to see that Fenrir be brought out, who hasn't been banned as much recently, which is a lot of a kind of a resurgence, since he is still annoying, but not nearly as annoying as he was before, since you can just kind of shoot them when they're not active. And it's going to allow, combined with that Melusi and the Capcan, for a little bit of easy gap denial from Arial.
One thing that I really like to see is Nilek bringing out that Capcan. I don't know if you saw yesterday during the NAL, but there was just one Capcan kill that battery captured in free cam that was just hilariously funny. I believe it was during the SSG Sonics game, but it was just a perfectly timed free cam, and it was just hilarious. So you can kind of see a lot of hilarious, just explosive moments from something like a Capcan, and I really look forward to seeing if that actually has any impact and maybe slows Makers down just that extra little bit here to give Arial Rise that extra little boost on this site. Not only that, they've got a lot of intel being brought out, so I really love this defensive lineup to keep Makers in the intel disadvantage, to just give Arial Rise every single advantage possible, to just sit back and take advantageous gunfights when the time comes.
Yeah, they are kind of playing into about the style I expected, Arial that is, just to kind of make things easier on themselves a little bit and shut down that coordination that we know Makers like to bring out. Might have a gunfight coming up here in just a second, as Giddy and Nilek are very, very close to one another. Nilek playing on those Teller stairs. Could be the first point of contact here. Makers need to get this opening pick secured, as this map can be very, very defender-sided, and they need that advantage to kind of get themselves into the round and have a fighting chance, especially since about half the round has elapsed by this point. Adam's going to get that opener for them, with Uzi kind of teasing that vertical angle that he sees a little bit as Adam looks to poke at yellow stairs. It's a minute 25 remain, and Makers have to start working things pretty soon.
Packer with another kill onto Snake. Swing out from Epic nets Adam, however, so Adam only gets one in this round as he tried to walk his way in, but Packer's still there. Packer just walked his way right into sight somehow, found 2 kills, and now leaves Epic, or Nilek rather, all alone in a 1v4 as Bino looks to attempt the plant. He'll trade out onto Giddy to end out that round, but Makers with a quick stampede through the site and a quick stampede to tie the game right back up.
Much better round there from Makers, and I think a lot of that is just them kind of reading into how Ariel played that first round. It's like I've said a couple different times now, Ariel is missing that primary calling figure that they've had, or just any really confident calling figures so far. And so they're going to play things a lot more loose, and a lot of the utility they're going to bring is going to support that, or in some cases, be brought to kind of shore up some gaps they might have and take some shortcuts. And so they're trying to disrupt a lot of that aggression and just really play into that team play they have that they're so well known for, because it's not something Ariel can really compete with right now. I'm sorry, I'm just laughing at the all chat right now, which is very, very funny. But in all seriousness, the, I do think the way that Ariel is playing with regards to their current situation interesting, but unfortunately against Makers, that is interesting does not always equal results.
Attackers are moving to defuse a bomb.
Once we in round number 3, Makers now back out on the board. And they kind of realized that Arial really like to bring out a lot of information operators, and they're returning the favor in their own right. They're bringing out the IQ again. They've consistently been bringing this Deimos, and Adam has also really loved to play this Lion, so they're bringing out a plethora of options here to keep themselves right back in sort of that intel game that I've been talking about through these past couple rounds. They're keeping themselves at least neck and neck with what Arial are bringing out, and I really love to see that because it's enabling them to go a lot faster and be very vigilant with some of their opening round takes, and just enabling them as well to get a lot of space control. Like already, Giddy, you saw, worked his way down into Secret all the way towards server, and even really cool, like really close to the site. So just in general, Makers are being very thorough and very fast.
So those are two good words to describe the way they generally like to play this map in general, or this map specifically, but in general. Seeing a lot of effort being placed into taking the extremities of the map, especially with the positioning of Giddy right now, playing inside of server. It could have the potential first contact here, but nothing's going to come of it just yet. They need to get this opening pick here onto that Malusi that Uzi is playing, although he's going to rotate out here. So he's shown his face, he's made his presence known, and now that's an area that Arial Arias have to be very wary of. Tristan on this IQ, though, is going to deal a ton of damage from up top just by taking out this utility and being a menace from above. Bino is going to get that breach open as soon as Nyluk runs out of utility, and that's kind of when Makers are going to look to start poking a little bit at the site to get some pressure going and to start working things to clear for an execute.
Allie, I think there might be an Electric Claw that might get that exothermic charge, so I think Arial Arise might just catch a break here. But never mind. I heard him throw it out a minute ago, but it doesn't look like it went off in time. Nyluk will eat a lot of his HP. It actually get felled as he tried to run back towards the deeper portions of the A site. That's Bino with the opener in this round, and now Makers with a very nice spearhead in towards the site itself. Packer as well, walking back down towards Tellers, but he's read by Epic, quickly traded back out. And now down into a 4 versus 4, with Epic still looking to take long-range fights. It's actually Adam, the next one on the board now, to regain the man advantage for Makers here. As we get under 30 seconds left in this round, Arial Arise feeling the pressure here from this Makers attack. They've got players coming from all different directions, ready to take 1v1 fights, but Uzi will win the first, but not for much longer as Adam's there with his second kill of the round, and now Uzi and Brios have to scramble, but so does Makers as they just have to run right in. Uzi with his second kill, Tristan attempting the plant, will be able to get it off in time. He doesn't have good coverage. Uzi swings out and shuts him down, and Giddy all alone up above will have no chance in that round. Arial Arise, 2-1.
Makers are very, very willing to be patient with these attacks and get all their ducks in a row before they go for anything, but Arial is aware of that fact in that last round, and they purposefully disrupt that as much as they can. And with the amount of time that was left, combined with the amount of util that Arial or the Makers had used to gain the other areas of the map, there wasn't much they could do besides take a lot of those straight up gunfights while just walking in. And when you have to do that on a site like Basement on Console, there are a ton of crossfires you're going to walk into from players inside of cafeteria and on pipes, as well as in that security room. It's just kind of too much to clear and too much to face check, and they didn't have the time to properly do it. They did have Giddy above on that buck, but he wasn't able to have the impact that he needed on those players over towards that kitchen and security side. And it just allowed Arial to retake in an effective 3 versus 3, since they were able to outposition Giddy's vertical play.
5 seconds left before insertion.
I want to take a moment and just appreciate what Arial Arise are doing right now. They've lost all 3 of the opening picks thus far, and yet their late round plays have just been so good overall. Sure, that one round they let Packer just, round number 2 specifically, they let Packer just run right into sight, but that can just sometimes be chalked up to the fact that you don't have the bodies left to be able to watch all the different angles. But overall, they've done a great job of retaking throughout most of the sites on most of the space so far on this map. And I think that just comes down to the overall knowledge that a lot of the players on Arial have. They're very good players in their own right, and they've proven that they can go head-to-head with a team like Mkers. And they're proving it right now. So far, they've looked very good just individually, but also just the coordination, like I was talking about, in the late round has been very good. And speaking of very good, Nilek will get the first opening pick for Arial Arise in this map as Adam, one of the star players for that team, is off the board first.
It's really not who you want to lose first. That line as well has a lot of ability to lock people in place, which is very good for either trying to get the execute down or just trying to get a refrag. Packer, though, is going to recuperate some of that loss by getting a pick onto Snake. He's lurking down below here on this Dokkaebi, as they knew there were several lurkers downstairs in the previous round, and they want to make sure they don't have the impact they did before. He's going to keep, I believe it's Nihilek, tied up pretty consistently here for this little bit, which is going to free up the rest of Mkers to attack the site and keep one of those guns down that Arial is really going to be depending on.
Just under half the round left now. Down to a 4v4, but nothing really happening recently, as Mkers are still kind of figuring out what it is exactly that they want to do. They've got a little bit of information on the fact that Uzi is playing inside of CEO, and Packer will actually be the next one there ready to greet him and end his life. Before Packer actually gets another kill in this round onto Brio, somehow allowed to just find a gap once again. Tristan gets on the board, Giddy as well, Epic dead inside a bathroom, and Mkers just go from a 4v4 to a 4v0 in a matter of seconds.
Yeah, we just talked about Arial being very good at retaking their own site there, and then only for the very next round for them to be completely locked out of their site due to some very good gap spotting from Mkers. Packer especially able to use the fact that Dokkaebi can be so silent and stealthy combined with those calls. He gets into that sneaky position inside of that console box, and he gets those 2 picks, which allows the rest of his team to move into position. And that kind of coordination and ability to find a gap and then turn that into not just a kill, but an entire round victory off of an execute is what's been separating Mkers from the pack so far. Why they won Element 3 and why they're continuing to do so well inside of T2 after losing 2 players that a lot of people kind of thought they weren't going to be able to replace.
Well, Ali, I hate to be that person, but I was talking about Arial Arise's intel game and late round clutch ability before that last round started, and then they go and prove me completely wrong by taking a bunch of 1v1s and just running around losing picks solo to specifically Packer, but just in general. Mkers in that last round did a great job of isolating Arial Arise, like you said, just keeping them out of their own sight, so they had no chance to retake. And I think that that's something that will have to change here. Arial Arise will need to be much more vigilant and much more forward when it comes to holding on to their site and just the overall outer portions of it. Because if you give up some of the site itself, like we saw last round, it just enables players like Packer to just have free reign, get a bunch of kills, and put Arial Arise in a spot that they cannot come back from.
Good to see a bandit trick come out from Snake here, as they know that Bino's opened up this single wall every time, which has prevented defenders from playing this very powerful position. And so they want to keep that closed for as long as they can. Packer is underneath with the gridlock, though, so he can deny that for at least a little bit here. Keep that bandit trick from coming out, although Arial also are looking to counter what he's doing. It isn't going to come to fruition, however. Lion's going to get a scan off as well. So they've gotten that wall open, and they've gotten some information as well. And I'm really kind of looking out for this Gara hook from Tristan, which is going to send him into the site.
Oh, there's a player from Arial Arise right next to him, but the fire's keeping them at bay. They have no idea. But no, Snake does find him and gets that opening kill onto Tristan before Packer just runs in again and gets yet another kill for his tally. Bino adds on to the score as well. So now a 3v3 as Snake's trying to go for a retake here and keep Arial Arise in this round. Epic with another one. Here comes the swing from Epic. Gets another one onto Packer. But now it's a 1v2. Packer gets a kill onto Snake with the track stingers, but Ariel Arise block out that round.
Yeah, Ariel just kind of bum rushed that diffuser plant a couple times in a row, which does end up working very, very well for them. As I think Ariel were expected to kind of be a little bit more passive or potentially caught off guard with the way that Mkers did that execute. And unfortunately, that's not how they played, or unfortunately for Mkers, that's not how they played. They were very ready to just retake that space at all costs.
Attackers need to
We even saw a
locate and
player
defuse the
die to
bomb.
those track stingers while trying to walk over them, because Ariel knows that the way they have to beat Mkers in this game is by catching them off guard. They're not going to out strategy Mkers in this game. But that gun skill they have, and especially with the fact that they're on defense on Consulate, that's going to be the winning formula here. And they kind of need to take this next round here, because if they go onto the attack with a 3-3 split, Mkers aren't going to leave such easy obstacles for them to clear on the defense.
10 seconds to go.
Final defensive round in map number 1, potentially for Ariel Arise, sends us back down to Garage.
Attackers
Side
are
with
heading
mixed
out to
results
defuse
for
the
them.
bomb.
Of course, remember, the first time we came here, it was Packer who, as we've been consistently seeing through this map, found a gap, exploited it, and just took full site control for Mkers. The next round, it was a great late round hold from Ariel Arise as they fought back from the man deficit. We'll look to see if they can't maybe have a little bit more early round success here and try and keep themselves in a more advantageous spot so they don't have to do that. Although they will forfeit the garage breach very early on, so a lot of space negated that they can play safely inside of garage, and that's going to give a big pressure point for Mkers to potentially enter from later in the round.
I like the Vigil being brought out here from Epic. They want to take it to Ariel or to Mkers early on in this round. Instead of letting them get a lot of that control, they've been fairly comfortably taking each time they've attacked this bomb
Attackers
site so
dropped the
far.
diffuser.
The
Attackers
early
have
breach being
recovered the
open
diffuser.
is going to apply a lot of phantom pressure to Ariel just by virtue of existing. Especially if they've seen that the Blitz is a thing, they might be worried about a run-in from any second. But right now, it looks like the plan is to have him run into yellow while Bino watches that open breach, while Giddy is up above, making vertical with the buck, so they can kind of dislocate people from a couple different angles all at once.
Well, the first logic bomb will rain out. It's worth noting that the logic bomb recently got some changes to where you have to wait for it to generate throughout the opening portions of the round. And that's how we're seeing it kind of come to fruition here later on, towards the halfway point. They're using it as more of a mid to late round roam pressure, but Packers just walked right into Pillar? How did that happen? He's in a perfect spot to potentially go for a plant, and he's got coverage from the breach. Sure, there's a Dreadnought working against him, but nonetheless, he is almost able to get the plant down. But a great retake from Brios and Uzi. Nets 3 kills now, as it's just Bino and Adam left in a 2v5, making a 1v4. And it's just Bino all alone. A masterful hold and a masterful retake there from Ariel Arise to get themselves that 4-2.
I mean, I'm just speechless. I thought that was for sure going to be Mkers execute. They played it very, very well. But yet again, that retake potential that we've seen from Ariel Arise, they're very good at just aggressing back onto these positions the Mkers are holding, especially when the plant is going down, since there's one less body and they know they can play the trades while that diffuser is happening.
Attackers need to
Or
locate
even
and
just
defuse
catch him off
any
guard,
bombs
since
they
you're
can.
gunned down and it's very difficult to get your gun back up in time to aggress while you're on that diffuser. And now this game is in the realm of possibility for Ariel. They are having to defend Consulate now, which, as stated previously, is a very good Mkers map. But they've won enough rounds that they only have to win 3 to close this out in regulation, and 2 rounds to win to just secure overtime. I mean, nomical, it's just doable now.
Attackers have located a bomb.
Oh, it's so doable.
10
And
seconds left.
Ali, another important thing to keep in mind, a few weeks ago when I was doing the XGS Grand Final with Goose, we hyped this up as the best map in the entire pool from Mkers. They had some of their most dominant wins on this map. And to see Ariel Arise taking them to Storm right now is very good to see for a roster that just got formed mere days ago, quite honestly. I'm not exactly 100% sure the timeline of the Ariel Arise roster shuffle, but it was very recent. And you have to wonder, what is this Arial Rise roster capable of as they start to get more experience under their belt? And now we've got a Blitz working his way in down below. That's going to be Epic looking to take fights, but it's Brios to take the first fight. Adam, once again, off the board early. And maybe that's a big reason why Makers have been struggling. Adam has had very little effect in most, if not all of these rounds. He's not doing very well on the scoreboard right now. And him being quiet might be a big reason that Arial Arise has this lead.
Yeah, he's kind of their ace in the hole sometimes with how good he can be, especially early on in the round is where he has a ton of his impact. But Brios gets the better of him here, and he's still watching this vert hole because he does have a good bit of cutoff from it, and he's going to get a second pick on Tabino the same way that Adam died out earlier. Yet he is going to get one back. He even takes out the Blitz, which is a ton of relief pressure for Makers so far, but they are on the back foot here. And they aren't going to have any more of those goo mines that Bino could put down, so any gaps he'd look to cover are going to remain open now.
Ilek looks to work his way up spiral stairs. He'll spot a player over by vending machine. But he'll look to instead engage in other portions of the map, like top yellow stairs. Some shots sent down range by Tristan to try and scare Nilek off a little bit, but he'll just hold his ground here at the top of spiral. Makers looking for a trade, and they'll get just that as Packer swings on his snake on the rappel end. So now down to a 3v3 here with just over a minute, and suddenly this seems very doable for Makers.
Not only doable, but highly probable even, just with the way this bomb site is set up, and they're playing it very, very intelligently. They're not going for these aggressive solo fights. They're not giving Arial anything they can get back. They're working to play off of each other and hold these crosses. Unfortunately, though, Brios does get one onto Tristan, and then Nilek gets one onto Giddy as well, so it's all left up to Packer to fight this 1 versus 3.
What are we seeing right now from Arial Arise? Well, for starters, we're seeing Nilek just run straight at Packer. But nonetheless, we're seeing them be very much a competent team right now. Not that they've never been competent, but I digress rather. They are looking very good right now. And as Uzi gets the plant down, now the timer starts to work against Packer, but now a 1v1. Can he get the last one? No, he cannot. It almost seemed like a heroic effort, but Arial Arise will lock it out in the end.
5-2 in round count right now from Arial. What am I seeing? This isn't the Makers that we normally see. They're not as put together, and they're not as good at shutting down that early aggression as they'd normally be. And really, I haven't seen them lose like this to Makers to Arial Rise since Blitz Gaming Series in that, I believe it was a semifinal game I casted with Kivan. This isn't what we'd normally see from them. Now, it's not all lost, right? Arial won 4 rounds on their defensive half, so Makers absolutely can too. But the way they lost that last round really doesn't bode well for the rest of this half, as a lot of it was because of some miscoordination and just some mispositioning and misreading in that early round. Adam especially has been really struggling to have impact in the opening portions of these rounds, and he is oftentimes, just the best player on Makers at doing that, and just not having that early round stability is really hurting them.
If you look at the scoreboard right now at the bottom in terms of kills, it's very much even for the side of Arial Arise, rather. On Makers, it was literally just Packer, who's 11-5. Everybody else on the team was either neutral or negative. Tristan, without a kill yet. Adam, 3-7. Makers, other than Packer, really just need to wake up here. It seems like overall, their just gunners are not awake and firing on all cylinders right now. Packer, the man I just spoke of, the one that's been dragging Makers through many of these rounds, the first one to die. And now Arial Arise are in a great spot to get match point.
They do still have to contend with Giddy, who's in a position not far from where Packer just died, but it looks like they know where he is, and he's away from the site, more importantly. That could potentially give them a 4 versus 3, or even a 5 versus 3 on the site if they look to go for something quick. And with the ability of Blitz to displace these defenders and force them to rotate into uncomfortable positions, it's absolutely possible for Arial to take the round right here.
I don't know if you saw, but Epic on the Blitz outside of the main garage breach. He wants to go for this push. He wants to get that plant down. But he's going to have to be careful because there is a Warden with Adam sitting over by Pillar. And that can be the big crushing blow in this round if they are not ready for it. Oh, but a well-timed EMP will shut down Adam's main ability. But Adam's just better. 2 amazing kills there. And now Mkers back in the driver's seat, but not for much longer as Snake on the backstab nets 2 kills for himself. Pistol Out only gets more, but Giddy gets 2 right back. So now Uzi left in a 1v2 against Adam and Giddy, but a C4 from long range. Adam is just so good when he's clicking. And Mkers draw back within 2.
The sentry turret placed on pipes. Adam gets that 3K they need to secure things. And that's part of what makes the defense on Consulate so powerful is there are so many spots like we saw Adam playing that allow you to get so much done, especially with Giddy playing very intelligently around that security room. He was able to give Adam all the cover he needed to get those picks and allow him the comfortability to move just enough there. And combined with the misplay from the blitz, they didn't realize that Bino had put a goo mine on that doorway before. So all that momentum that Epic had on that blitz was stopped in an instant. And Adam took advantage, shot him in the legs, and shut down the crux of that attack. And halted that entire momentum of that take. And forced them to play ball with the aerial defense or with the Mkers defenses. And from that point on, you got to take fights against Adam and Giddy. You're not winning those.
Yeah, the way Adam was shooting in that last round, he probably could have 1v5'd Arial, quite honestly. From that singular position, he completely dislodged the entire Arial attack, rather. I mean, like I said, when he's on, he is one of the best gunners in NA. And I think being more of an entry fragger has kind of enabled him a lot more. He's just been so good ever since he joined up with this Mkers team. And I love to see that, quite honestly. I love to see players when they get to thrive like this. Now, Arial are definitely still the favorite team to win out this map. They've still got that 2-round lead, and they've still had a lot of good things to build off. This round, they're pivoting a little bit more from their intel-focused lineup that they've been bringing a lot of these rounds to a little bit more focus on just general utility. You've got something like the Twitch, which would be great for getting rid of something like those Vulcan canisters. You've still got some of that utility, but you've also got, or rather, you've still got some of that intel utility with the Dokkaebi, but you've also got the Flores, which is another great option for an offensive lineup because you get so much value with those 4 Rotero drones to get rid of things like barbed wire, like a few more of those Vulcan canisters potentially, and even just other miscellaneous gadgets. But Tristan will delete the only hard breacher that Arial had from the server, the ace off the board, and Mkers with a big advantage.
They finally regained some of that early round tenacity that we've been talking about. Bino is going to take quite a bit of damage from an unknown, or from a source that's unknown to me. Bruce looks to get a floor bang, but nothing's going to come out of it just yet. Bino's holding on inside of Administrator here, along with Tristan holding that crossfire. So yet again, Arial are being shut out completely at the door. Their Mkers are kind of doing the thing that we expected them to do before, and just shut out this attack with clever positioning, and they're gonna do just that, leaving everything up to Snake. He's worked his way into Council here, but doesn't end up working out. Adam has that pick, and Arial Arise found themselves losing the grip of that advantage.
Ali, I'm gonna be honest with you. I went down to write the opening pick in my notes, and I look back up, and it's a 4v1. Or 5v1, rather, because it was a flawless round. Yeah. Even worse for Arial Arise. That was crazy. That kind of gets back to what I've been saying, though. When Mkers are on, they are on. They can just snap their fingers and just get 3 kills, 4 kills, 5 kills. It's insane what they can do when they're all clicking. And they're bringing it back. I talked about how Packer had kind of been dragging this team through that early portions of the game. And it's amazing and good to see that he did that, because now that Mkers are truly awake, he doesn't have to be the one doing all the heavy lifting. He can sit back and rely more on his main gunners, like Giddy, who's clicking right now, like Adam, who's finally come back to life. And when you have those players that are at the top of their game, those two, or even just any combination of 2 on Mkers, are good enough alone to just completely shut down what a team like Arial Arise want to do. Arial Arise in those last 2 rounds just really have not stood much of a chance at all.
Yeah, no, they haven't at all. And I would just like it known on record. The reason I fumbled that play-by-play I was from was I just forgot what the call out for that room was, which is weird because I like Constant a lot. But you know, mistakes happen on occasion, and
Are
I
you
think
a
allowed
consulate connoisseur?
on occasion. Unfortunately, it's a map that I didn't get to play like a ton when I was an active player, since it was not one that like the teams I played for ever really liked. But it is a map that I've come to enjoy a lot as a caster because it does allow a lot of strategic depth, even if it is kind of room clearing simulator sometimes. That can absolutely lead to interesting things, like the cap can that we've seen brought out a couple times here. And it's also allowed for some decent aggression from Makers onto the extremities of this map here, which has been kind of concerning so far for Arial. As I mean, in this round alone, Uzi is essentially walking corpse right now, and it looks to have slowed them down quite a bit.
Yeah, you really want to keep that Dokkaebi alive as long as possible to get some of that intel utility out. First logic bomb will go out, and it will give away where a multitude of these Makers players are. Oh, Packer, do they know about him? They do! Brios gets the nice read onto Packer. Now the Capcan off the board, but Nilak just burst into the site and will get felled, at least down, but Epic opens up onto Giddy. So now a 5v3 technically in favor of Ariel Rise. What can Makers do here to go for a retake? It seems as though they're just opting to sit and wait, and maybe wait for Ariel Rise to overextend a little bit. Nilak will get finished off by Adam, seemingly from up above. The Snake looks to walk his way in here from yellow stairs. Does he have an idea of the fact that there's not really anybody over there from Makers? It doesn't seem like he does, and it seems like he might walk into the site here.
The blitz up top could be a lot of trouble for Bino, as he's kind of caught in a corner inside of closet upstairs. Although he is actually going to get finished off with a C4, so now the health advantage firmly implanted in the hands of Nakers. This is going to prompt Brios to get a little bit adventurous on this top floor. We see Bino has pulled back a little bit over towards console, with his back angle being held by Tristan. He doesn't have to get any kills here. There's only 30 seconds left. He just has to waste time.
Well, you said he doesn't have to get any kills here, but Snake will get 2 kills now, leaving Adam left alone in a 1 versus 2, although Uzi, like you said, has been kind of that walking ghost for most of this round. Won't take much to finish him off. Can Adam hold on for just a little bit longer here and make Ariel Arise make mistakes? Doesn't seem like they will, but Brios will lose most of his HP here. Is he good enough to win the fight? No, he's not. It's a down here. 1 from Adam, 2 for Adam. Knocks them both down. And we are tied up thanks to Adam's masterful effort in the 1v2.
All you need is that SMG-11 and shotgun combo. The Paladin Smite, as a friend of mine likes to call it, claims yet another life and ties up this game as Makers bring things to 5-5, and they can go back to a very advantageous bomb site, which they won not handedly necessarily, but was certainly a very confidence-inspiring round for players like Giddy and Adam. And now that everyone's kind of firing on all cylinders, they don't really have anyone lagging behind other than Tristan. They can take this more convincingly now. I like the fact that Makers are bringing that Capcan again, as it forces Ariel Rise to slow down at every doorway and make sure that they're not going to lose ankles. Combined with that Legion and that Lucy, it kind of makes that effect appear threefold in this round, is there's so much that Makers are bringing to stall this aggression from Ariel, and then the Valkyrie as well provides great information on top of that.
5 seconds to insertion.
Ali, I want you to think about this for a second. Since round 8, last 2 rounds, Adam has gone 7-0. He was 3-7 at one point. Now he's 10-7.
Ooh.
I know I've talked about him a lot, but like seriously, the amount of turnaround that Makers have had since he woke up is just mind-blowing. He really has been that X factor for this team. Ariel Rise had that great lead that was 5-2, and it quickly has evaporated, mostly thanks to the efforts of Adam and Giddy. Can Ariel Rise stall this momentum and bring it back in their court here? With 30 seconds into round number 11, the penultimate round of regulation. Back on Garage. They've already got the main breach open, so that's a really good start for them. But what do they do with it now? They don't really have much else going for them yet. We're about 45 seconds in. They need to find something else to actually give them some map control.
I like the pick of this Nook from Snake, as it can bypass some of that utility that Makers have brought to slow them down. Notably, he can essentially be infinitely invisible to those Valkyrie cameras, and if he walks by a
They know.
Melusi Banshee,
Oh no!
it won't have any effect. Tristan, though, is going to have a lot of effect on this round. He takes down Epic. He has opened up that main wall, but yet again, that's an uncontested entry which Makers have garnered for themselves. And now that's going to put Arial Arise on the back foot. They have to work their way into a fortress with less manpower than their opponents.
Alec looks to work his way up yellow stairs here, trying to find something to equalize this man count back down to a 4v4. At this point, Arial Arise are kind of just walking into a buzzsaw. That is the site for Makers. A couple of cap can traps spotted there by Nilek. A good find. Keep himself alive and kicking, and very much kicking. He kicks Giddy right into the grave now. An equalized man count. That's exactly what Arial Arise needed here as they enter the final minute.
Snake's going to be skulking around here. I believe he's going to try to make his way in towards server and just silently skulk his way over towards that backside, as primarily this attack is focused on the front side, that garage breach. Adam might expose himself here, but not exposing his hitbox at all. Uzi having so much trouble hitting his mark. Frag grenade is going to dislodge Adam a little bit, but not enough that he can get a pick until exposes just enough. He's going to try to do it again, but there's only 20 seconds left, Nomical.
Oh, but Adam, Packer, Tristan, everybody from Makers getting alive in the scoreboard. Uzi gets one, but he's left in a 1 versus 3 alley. What seemingly was a great start for Arial Arise has all come apart.
Ooh.
Bino will make it even worse. Round number 11. 4 rounds in a row now for Makers. And they go from down 5-2 to on match point.
That point secured from Makers off the back of 4 beautiful defenses in a row. If they can make it 5, then they'll secure the first map, their own map, without having to go to overtime. But Arial Arise have already proven they're capable of denying that, and they're not going to let that happen. Although we're still seeing that stall potential being brought out by Makers with the smoke, the Legion, and the Goyo, plus that shield, or actually not a shield that Giddy's going to be bringing, but the operator he's going to be bringing. All these things make it very difficult for Arial Arise to get into the building. And one of the notable things that they're going to have lacking with the lacking IGL situation is problem-solving ability, as oftentimes that's what your IGL is going to do, is they'll be the primary problem solver as the round progresses. And on a map like this that can be so team play oriented and so utility heavy, not having that problem solver has really hurt them a lot, especially since people like Adam that we've talked up so much, and Giddy and Packer, they've all come alive. They're all firing on all cylinders. There's no easy solution that Arial has to get into these rounds.
What can Arial Arise do here? Seemingly a fall from grace, alley, in the later portions of this game. They need to bring it all back. Just one chance remaining to bring it all back towards overtime. It seems like we might be going pretty quick here, alley. We've got the Amaru on the board from Snake. They got the Gridlock as well. A lot of execute-focused utility. Could we see an early push come in?
But I think it is entirely possible, and I think that's probably their best option to bring this to overtime. Is playing the game normally hasn't really worked at all, but getting in Makers' faces and forcing them to adapt to something very quickly, that could potentially work. But that smoke that I was talking about is coming into effect. Packer slowing down a little bit of this forward momentum they were going for, and Giddy slowing a lot of the forward momentum by getting that pick up the Brios, and his follow-up on the Nihilic. He's opened up the round for Makers, and he's closed so many doors for Arial Arise, especially with these other picks gained by his teammates. He's going to prompt a rappel up onto the roof from Snake as he and Uzi have to regroup.
I'm genuinely so confused at what just happened. Giddy gets 2 picks.
You and me
A
both.
player from Arial Rise just goes into the site and gets 1 for 1. And now you see the Amaru, who's supposed to be the first player in the building usually, and Uzi left in a 2 versus 4 with the map on the line. What can they do to regroup here? Well, the answer is going to be not really that much. They're still kind of close together, but they have absolutely no map control to work with. There's still 3 very healthy members of Makers that they have to go up against, and they're still kind of pretty far apart. Now, Uzi will make things a little better here as he gets 1 kill, but the timing from Snake is just milliseconds off as he misses the shot on his way into the building. Uzi as well will give away his position. Now Makers seemingly know exactly where it is that they're going to come from. A nice shot from Adam at long range. But now it's all up to Uzi in the 1 versus 3. 45 seconds to try and make something happen. So he'll walk his way in towards the site, but it's Adam who goes huge in the late portions of that game to help propel Makers to a map win on Consulate, just 1 map away from the grand finals.
One map away from facing fluffy aimers whenever the grand finals take place. I'm not actually sure when that happens, by the way. But nonetheless, very good job to Makers. A well-deserved map win, I would say. It's not over quite yet, as we do have Border coming up, which I think is going to be a much better map for Ariel. And if it's much better than this current map was all 12 rounds of regulation being required for Ariel to be felled and for this map win to go to Makers. So who knows? Could see overtime or could see a map 3.
It's going to be very telling as to how Aerial Rise get off to, well, at least what kind of start they get off to, rather, on Border. Because we saw they got off to a strong start here on the defense on the more favored side of Consulate. But then we kind of started to see the flaws come in, the signs of a new team. You get on the attack, and the coordination's just a little off. Some of the timing, some of those little, like, smaller details are just not refined to a point where you see on a team like Makers who have that chemistry, who have that experience to know this is what we need to do at this precise moment. And then they just go do it. They're just so refined. They're so hard to beat. This Makers team, they just don't lose, man. They literally don't lose. It doesn't matter who they play. I mean, at this point, like, you can never bet against them because even like we saw, when they're not shooting and they're not firing back on all cylinders, they can wake up in an instant like that and just come back and steal a map from you.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, they haven't really missed a beat since picking up Tristan and Adam for Kobe and Woos. I know a lot of people, myself included, thought that losing Kobe specifically was really going to halt them, grind that momentum to a stop, but it didn't. They've just kept going, and I think a lot of that's owed to the system they have. Is you can't necessarily just plug and play people because Adam and Kobe are different players and Woos and Tristan are different players, but they can incorporate them into the system with their strengths and all, and that's enough for them to win. That's enough to carry things forward and just grab that momentum they had and keep going.
Yeah, I think it's going to be another really interesting thing that we have to see is, does Adam keep this momentum going? Can Makers keep this going into a map that I would argue plays really well into their favor, like Border? It's a very aggressive map. It's a very fast-paced map, and I think Makers will do very well on it. But Ali, I believe we got to go to a break here real fast and give everybody a little bit of a break. But when we come back, it's map 2 of the Game Rogue Summer Series semifinals between Makers and Ariel Arise. Well, map number one certainly ended with fireworks between Aerial Rise and Makers. We'll see if map number two can bring just as many fireworks as we set our sights towards Border here in the Game Rogue Summer Series semifinals. I'm Nomical, that's Elias, and we're very pleased to be bringing you this matchup between two of the staple teams of T2. And Ali, what are our thoughts for this next map? Do we think Aerial Rise can pull it back?
I mean, they ended the last map 7-5, largely off of their proficiency with defense, but they did get a very good attacking round in there. And I think really what Ariel needs on this map is to just kind of do the same thing they were doing on Consulate. And Border is a map that lends itself much more to a lot of aggression and mechanical gunfights. Whereas Consulate can be very team heavy, especially when you're trying to take positions like Checkers Hall or Top Yellow or the Garage. There are just so many places that have good angles for team fights that makers are just going to be more adept at because of the fact that they're more put together right now. But Border, it isn't built like that at all. There's a lot more opportunity for just aggression, which does require some coordination, but it's a hell of a lot easier than Consulate.
Yeah, I think you definitely made a lot of sense there. That was a great point. I tend to agree with that because, like you were saying, Consulate is a very team-based map, and Aerial Rise recently lost the foundation of their team, their main shot callers, Kiru and Inrio. And so you don't really have those players to kind of gel the team together. And that's, I think, a big reason why we saw them struggle, particularly on attack. And like you said, looking at Border, it favors a lot more of that raw aggression. And that's something that Aerial Rise still do have. They've got players like Brios and Snake who are widely regarded as some of the top gunners in NA. So I feel like as we get into the game here and see how this game unfolds, it will favor them a little bit more than last map did.
Certainly will, though is also like the tail end of that or the flip side of that, I guess, which is makers are also really, really good at killing people. And the border is a map where you do a lot of killing people. And if they have the better coordination and can throw some better utility usage into those team fights, there is still a lot of opportunity for makers to take things in a very advantageous direction for themselves. We'll just have to see who plays that aggression better. But economical, I think we should probably throw it to the game pretty soon, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the time for waiting is over. I think we are just about ready to get underway with our second map of Border. And I'm really interested seeing, or to see rather, how these map and operator bans unfold here. Apologies there. Been a little bit of a long day. I assume you know what that's like, Allie, going straight from work to the casting desk. So,
I went from
bear with me here
qualifiers.
with some of my yapping. Oh, you
Yeah,
played qualifiers today. That's fun.
yeah.
Qualifiers are
It's
always fun. Well, let's
it's
get back on
always a
topic
good
here, Allie.
time.
Let's get back on topic here. I
Should get
think
back on
these
topic.
operators are going to be very interesting to see. Ying off the board first is something that's pretty stock standard. We saw that in the last map. Ariel Rise not wanting to deal with something like this Ying, and I think it makes a lot of sense. But I think these other three bands are going to be really interesting. There's a lot of flexibility on a map like Border.
There is a lot of flexibility on border, and Ying also just has so much power to enable and execute that might otherwise be really wishy-washy. Monty can do a lot of the same thing, and I'd argue he's probably better on border than he is on consulate just because of the way the map is constructed. And it also just makes sense that you wouldn't want to give Ariel that opportunity since it is a team that has been known for a lot of its very good Monty plays. And it also just gives an avenue for uncomfortable aggression that you don't want to give Ariel. Same thing with the zombie. She can fortify positions like that. I call it pirate, but it's that like corner box inside of CCTV. Positions like that with a good zombie become impenetrable some rounds. And since they're starting on the attack, makers don't want to deal with it.
Man, I was going to make the joke, did we just clone Consulate if they banned Mira there? That would have been funny if it was just literally the exact same operator bands in the exact same order. But nonetheless, that Valkyrie ban coming out, I actually really like that ban. It's a very strong operator. There's a lot of intel you can gain with those black eye cameras on border because it's a more condensed map and you can gain a wider range of intel through multiple different rooms. But as we set our sights towards the game itself, as we so often do, we will start on the top floor of Armory with Arial Rise on the defense.
Defused by
And
attackers.
just looking at their overall operator composition, I think this lineup screams just raw aggression and getting in the face of Makers. And I actually really like that play. Because like we saw in the last map, if you allow players like Adam on Makers to get going, you honest to God just cannot stop them.
Yeah, it's kind of like a train, and those are very difficult to stop at the best of times, and at the worst of times, well, we saw what happened last map. I like the Fender, I like the Doc, I like the Aruni. All this kind of combines to just give a lot of area denial power
5 seconds.
and, like you said, raw aggression potential into the hands of Ariel. That Doc can heal himself if he takes damage, or even overheals himself if he wants to take a weird fight. The Fender can plug some gaps, and Uzi playing that Aruni is going to lock off some areas that might look to throw utility, and he has a DMR with an ACOG, which, if I'm taking a long fight on border, I'm going to want, but the Boss G from Brios is what strikes first.
Well, the Boss G still has an ACOG, so your point proven exactly right there. The ACOG, the first one to deal a deadly blow in this map, as it's the Nomad of Tristan off the board first. Pretty big blow there, especially considering you didn't really have much of a chance to set up any of those air jabs and create cutoffs for the attack. That's going to give players like Epic a lot more freedom to roam around the map and cause chaos. You could see players like Nightlag as well going for the run out, but hang on a second. The aggression and runouts from Arial Arise have netted a gap in the site that Packer looked to take advantage of, but Brios with
gosh.
3 huge kills just locks Makers out of the site entirely. Now Giddy and Bino led at a 2 versus 4, and everything they had going for them is suddenly just gone.
Yeah, they had a really good execute going there, but unfortunately, doesn't pan out so far. 1 versus 3 now for Giddies. He's found the first pick that he needs. He has pings on the others, but so far no one's revealing themselves. They know the advantage they have here, and they want to hold on to it for as long as they can. And that's going to prompt Giddy to be very, very careful with how he does everything here. Gonna look to get the pick on this ping he has, but gonna run out of the way yet again. Ariel have been very good at getting these mid advantages and then just holding on to them so far. As Giddy, he's just gonna bob and weave, make more and more holes until he's out of ammo, and just see if someone from Ariel will slip up.
Yeah, not only that, they've been doing a very good job of keeping themselves fluent as well, keeping themselves moving around the map, keeping Makers guessing as to where they might come from. And so far, at least through this first round, Makers have had very little idea about what it is that Arial Arise has been doing. Giddy looks to run in here and potentially work his way towards the site itself, but still 3, now 2 players from Arial Arise left to deal with. Make it 1. Hang on a second. Giddy now in a very much winnable situation as Brios gives away his position. Lighting up Giddy now. Damage done to both sides, but no kills just yet as both players cannot quite land all of the necessary shots. Giddy has intel on where Brios is, and he wins
my
that
gosh.
fight! How do you let that happen, Arial Arise? A masterful play from Makers there, and they steal round 1 away.
We see the nah in the chat from... Oh my god, Rios. We see the reaction in the chat from Adam because, yeah, that's just a clutch he shouldn't have won. I believe that started off as a 1 versus 4, but just by being careful and calculated with his positioning, Giddy gets every pick back because Ariel, they do leave just enough gaps that Giddy can worm his way in and recollect what would otherwise be just a very poor round from Makers. They didn't have enough idea of where the aerial players were to go for the execute they did, and they didn't have enough coverage on the plant to prevent it from just being swung. But yet Giddy still wins it because Ariel, they're just very sloppy in that situation, especially once Giddy had wormed his way up Armory and was inside of that 90 hallway. 2 people held aggressive angles and 2 people died on those angles. And the Boss G is a phenomenal gun, but if you need to take a prolonged gunfight with multiple shots being fired, it's not the weapon you want to have.
I hate to say it again, Ali, just because we have been talking about it a lot ever since the slide started to happen from Arial Arise. But that's another situation where not having that fluent and more coordinated, experienced IGL group, or even a single IGL like they used to have with Poison, can really hurt the team. You need something, or somebody rather, like that who can just tell the team, hey, let's sit back and wait. Do not give him any opportunity to take 1v1 gunfights. Nobody from Arial Rise was saying that. 1v1s were presented to Giddy, and you saw exactly what happened. That's another big thing that we were talking about. These players on Makers are just so capable of winning 1v1s, but Makers have found a gap, it seems. They've worked their way all the way to the bottom of each staircase, found a kill onto Snake, and now they have a great amount of control for themselves as they look to push their way onto the site. It seems as though they might disengage for a second, as Arial Rise has seemingly recognized what it is that they're doing, and Makers will instead opt to go for a full clear and try and isolate these players once again.
They're doing a very good job, however, as it's them who's getting isolated. Packers in a 1 versus 4, the second for his team this game. This time engaged with an immediate fight inside of CC, but Brios ends up winning that out. And Arial Rise finally collect the 1 versus 4 they failed to get on that first round.
It's almost ironic how the turntables turned in that round. It turned right back on its head. That time they did a much better job of going for trades and just winning 1v1 gunfights. You saw they gave nobody on Makers a chance to absolutely get comfortable. And now Arial Rise find themselves on the board, tied back up at 1-1 here as we set our sights towards Ventilation and Workshop. A site that's kind of fallen out of favor with a lot of teams. It used to be one of those more stronghold sites that teams would go to first or second, but now it's kind of the third option. I think a big reason for that has to be just in general how powerful shields are. You can use those shields or just a lot of the aggressive operators that you have to use on the attack to just quickly take space because of how exposed that portion of the map is to the outside. And defensive teams don't want to have to deal with that. So I think that's a big reason why a lot of teams choose to go there last.
Yeah, you can really just gotta keep teams guessing by forcing them to adapt to new things they haven't seen before, which so far, both times we've seen Makers attack a site for the first time, they've ended up in a 1 versus 4. One of those was successful because Giddy is just him. The second, however, is far less successful as Arial are just better at working that one since it's a far less advantageous operator in that position. We'll see if Arial have kind of figured, or if Makers have figured out the Arial game plan so far, because they've been playing, I think, about like they have to in this situation. They have to play aggressive, they have to get in Makers' faces, they can't let them get comfortable at all. And that's exactly what we've seen from them. They're fighting Arial at the door, or even beyond the door sometimes. But look at this! A plant is already coming down because there is a gap that is red. Snake does have a C4 to punish this, however, but the diffuser, it's inside of sight here, and Makers are on the back foot with that opener.
A huge gap there, potentially exposed for a moment by Makers, but nonetheless, Arial Rise did a great job of plugging the gap, and Brios, with a nice flag onto Giddy, will end out his life. So now a man advantage firmly in control of Arial Rise. But where are you going, Brios? Tristan's behind you, and he's ready to expose you for that mistake. Now Makers have suddenly been given a freebie and maybe another chance at life in this round. What can they do to capitalize off of it, however, is the big question. They've still got a lot of information available, but other than that, they don't really have a lot going for them. They don't really have much control inside of the map. But Adams got a kill onto Uzi, so now back to a 3v3, and suddenly Makers have made this very much winnable.
Tristan's going to try to fight this player
Oh!
inside of Customs, but Nilex's going to get that pick instead, beating out the DMR pistol with his hollow sight. Bino has that refrag, however, which is going to prompt him to jump inside of that closet. And Adam might have a fight upstairs here inside of Armory, but he's being very careful about how he takes this. He knows that if he loses this fight, it's going to be hell for his teammate. And that's exactly what ends up coming to fruition. Bino has to clutch this 1 versus 2 now. He knows that Epic is going to be inside of Armory. He knows that Snake is going to be watching that diffuser, and in fact, he has pings on him, but he has to win this fight, and he does! Instead of going for the diffuser, though, he's watching for this retake from Epic, goes and grabs the diffuser off of that rotation, and now he's going to try to work his way into the other side of the site and plant. Epic, though, in a great position at the bottom of metal stairs, just working his way, exerting so much pressure with his existence, and that's going to prompt Bino to take this fight,
Not
and
again.
he wins it. The second clutch for Mkers to win their third round on this map.
Oh, Arial, Arise, you had that firmly in your control. But again, Makers are just better. They're just better. That's two situations now where they were in a 1vx situation and a player just goes nuclear to win out a round for Makers. Everything was going Ariel Arise's way in that round. Until it wasn't. Until the one player jumps out the window, gives a freebie and a free chance. I called it a free chance back in the round for Makers, and that's exactly what it proved to be. It was a 5v3 at one point for Ariel Arise, and they threw it away. That's just with players of that caliber, it's just honestly inexcusable. Like, sure they're new, so you can give them the benefit of the doubt, rather. Excuse me, but nonetheless, these are mistakes that you just cannot be making at this caliber.
Yeah, I mean, we've had 2 round victories for Arial over Makers, like I was saying earlier, and both of them were off the back of clutches. A collective 1 versus 6. Or I guess 2 versus 6 if we're adding up the players. Which is, like you said, just kind of inexcusable for the caliber of play that we know these players are capable of. This early aggression from Snake could potentially net something, but it only nets a bullet in his chest, which does not lead to a kill for him. Or for Makers, though, as he's still up. But Makers, they've been so good at, clutching these things out. And Arial, they've gotten that round advantage, or that man advantage, and they just can't close it out.
About 30 seconds in now, and Makers are working their way back up towards the building. This is kind of a general theme that we see from them. The first 30 seconds or so, they don't really take too much control. But then once they figure out what it is that they want to do and where they want to push from, they will just go. They will take whatever is given to them at a very rapid pace. And it's a strategy that, as we've seen, has proven very successful for them on a multitude of occasions. Here their eyes right now in a site that we don't really see that often over inside of customs.
Swapping mags.
It's very interesting to see. I feel like this actually might work out pretty well for them because it enables a lot of those players to get very aggressive and kind of spread out throughout the map and get in the face of Arial Arise, or rather of Makers. And there you go, Arial Arise with the opener. Epic onto Packer before Adam just sneaks his way into Archives, shuts down Brios, and we sit at a 4v4.
3 and 1 on opening picks so far for Arial Arise, unable to convert one of them so far. There's a potential pick here for Epic playing this Echo. There's someone who's inside a CC steps foot on the wrong area. This breach being open on the site as well exerts a ton of pressure on its own. Echo Drone is spotted out by Makers, so there is information on it, but they're not able to dispatch it quite yet. But it looks like they know they have pretty firm control of the top floor here. And they need to start working this into site pressure because Nomical, there's only 1 minute left for them to do this.
Indeed, there is only 50 seconds now for them to work with. But the good news is that they've done a lot of chip damage to Arial Arise, and they'll actually finish off what little bit remained of Snake, as Giddy will add to his total in the map. But Epic keeping his team fighting very much so, as he's able to add another one. Giddy now up the board. Tristan responds on a Uzi. And Makers are just going blow for blow with Arial Arise right now. They're keeping themselves in the advantage here as we get under 30 seconds left. I like an Epic have to go big here in the 3v2 to try and keep Makers out of the sight. And they're doing a pretty good job of that to this point. But Adam has the right read on Nihilek, and it leaves Epic in a 1v3. Swings onto one. Bino now off the board. An ace clutch now needed in the final 10 seconds here for Arial Arise. Maybe a fourth one presenting itself, but Epic will lose most of his HP in the process. Somebody needs to plant or somebody needs to get the kill, and it will be Tristan to do the latter. Makers, now with 3 rounds on the board, and they're steamrolling their way towards the grand final.
Finally, a round win that does not rely on a 1vx. Makers have figured something out. And you mentioned there the fact that Makers were able to go blow for blow with Arial, and a lot of that was because of the fact that they had gotten that early man advantage, or not man advantage, but they got that early pick immediately to trade, that kill onto Packer. And that takes Brios off the board, who's been a menace so far on the Vigil this map. But it also means that they're not going into that side execute while a man down, as that would have just prevented them from getting that man advantage they got, which they eventually worked into a 3 versus 1. That ability to not let that opening pick be uncontested like we've seen previously aided them quite a lot in that last round, which is going to prompt another attempt at Armory from Mkers, which I believe they won the second time they went. So we'll have to see if they can repeat that success. But Arial or Mkers have started to figure out a little bit of why things weren't working for them that last round. And so here they have a great opportunity to bring things back and continue this round lead they have.
Well, the last time we were here, it was that 1v4 from Giddy in round number 1. Arial definitely do not want to let that happen again. Snake, once again, going for another run-out opportunity, but nothing presenting itself there. So he'll just fall back into the depths of border and get himself out of dodge. About 30 seconds in. Mkers not really doing too much right now, just going to put a little bit of initial pressure on the building and towards the site itself. Still nothing really crazy coming in terms of engagements just yet, as nobody from Mkers wants to make a bad misstep that will potentially cost them a huge piece of utility, especially something like that Deimos. We've been seeing Deimos' pick rate kind of skyrocket recently. A lot of teams like to use him for some of that roam clear and just to pressure out isolated defenders, and it's really smart about how some of these teams tend to do that. But Adam will read Snake and punish him for some of that aggression that he's been trying to do throughout this map. This time he will not get any value as he's the first one off the board.
Yeah, just having that Legion knocked off as early as this could be great for Mkers. We do see a player proned on top of the cabinet inside of Archives here, which could be a very tricky position if Adam doesn't realize it. With that Deimos you were talking about, it's in the hands of Packer, who is a bit of a wild card player.
No, it's not.
For Mkers, and he's also dead presently in this round. But in the hands of someone with good communication like Packer, it gives a lot of opportunity to just tell your teammates where people are and have them get those picks. But unfortunately, it just hasn't been working out for Packer so far in this game. Brios is in a little bit of an extended position here, which Mkers are probably going to look to try to capitalize on if they can. But it's actually Uzi and Nihilak to fall, which is going to prompt Epic to rotate around Brios as well, as they need to fight back into this attack. Brios does that, so does Epic, and it brings us to a 2 versus 2.
Oh, but Epic's feet just get exposed that little bit too much there, and Tristan's able to capitalize off it. Now Brios left in a 1v1 now as he gets Bino. But Tristan behind the reinforced wall is there with a great cover on his teammate. And it's Mkers to put another one on the board here, Ali, as they are really flying through border.
Yeah, it's a border they're not having much trouble crossing. Is like you said, 4-1 so far, and they figured out what was going wrong in those early rounds. They're no longer letting players like Brios have their way with how the rounds progress. But speaking of Caveira being brought out by Epic, a bit of a last-ditch attempt to just throw something into the gears that Mkers have established in this machine that they've been bringing. And if that goes unread, there is the potential for a lot of punishment of these Mkers players, especially since we know Packer likes to play pretty solo and kind of lurky. There's the opportunity for potentially Epic to turn that into an interrogation, which can enable some of these other guns like Brios to come online and get those picks.
Ali, I would just like to go ahead and sue you for stealing my dad jokes. I'll be hearing a message from my lawyer after the cast is done.
I've been doing that since 2016, man. Get on my level.
I didn't even know you in 2016.
Exactly.
How are you stealing? Wait, were you stealing my puns and I didn't even know it?
Were you stealing mine?
Wait, you just admitted that on broadcast. I can use that against you.
This guy.
Oh,
Speaking of this guy,
Bino!
not like being taken off the board by Bino. No longer that guy. He's going to be that Cam guy instead for the rest of this round. And Adam as well picks on Epic. The Caveira knocked off of the board. as now everything falling apart for Arial so far in this round. Uzi looks to get something back, but no one reveals themselves so far. Bino's going to get a pick on the Snake. It's all left up to Uzi and Brios, 2 versus 5. No control of the site. Everything going wrong.
So color analysis for this round. Makers go kill. That's exactly what they did.
The
They
W
just went-
key.
Yeah, W key. Press your mouse buttons. That's exactly what they did. And it's working out very well for them. But Brios with a nice C4. I thought it was Uzi who got that kill because he lined up a headshot there. It seemed right as the C4 went out. But nonetheless, now a 2v2. And suddenly things don't seem so bleak for Arial Arise here. This is very much a winnable situation, especially with how much impact Brios has been having through most of these rounds. He looks to go for a run out there. There was a player downrange that he might have been able to spot, but nobody peeking their head from that spot just yet. So we've got about half the round left here. And Tristan looking to walk their way forward here. Tristan will walk right into Brios and end him for this round. And now it's Uzi left on 7 HP with over a minute to burn through and 2 fully healthy attackers from Makers. It's going to be almost a miraculous situation if he can actually win this one out. So he'll look to reposition here. He's got pings on 1. Can he line up the shot? No, he cannot. Bino will end him out there. It only took 1 bullet, and it's a 5-1 half for Makers.
Now, I don't know if you've ever watched Sesame Street, but they used to do a word of the day, and the word of today is tomfoolery, as that's been a lot of what we've seen on this map from both sides of the coin. Arial doing a lot of it, Makers doing some more, and we all have a chuckle, but most of the chuckling has been
Mr.
reserved
Grover,
for
man,
Makers.
can you please define tomfoolery?
Oh my gosh. I mean,
Are
we're just
you
seeing
laughing at the chat or
shenanigans.
me?
We're both, I guess. I don't know. Rios has been on one today, just by the way. Every time I see this man, like, just communicate via text, there's, like, at least 3 meows in there. It's been quite humorous to see it. Honestly, a little bit more personality to get out of a lot of T2 players. They're all kind of reserved and focused on themselves quite a bit, although you occasionally get someone like Packer who produces very funny memes.
10 seconds to insertion.
I'm going to assume I know which one you're talking about, and I'm going to say
5
no
seconds to
comment.
insertion.
It's like the one from like the Brios time where he's like staring into the camera.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
Attempt to
So
recover
we're,
the diffuser.
Ali, we do still have a game going on. I just would like to
We
remind
do.
everybody.
We do.
We are back into round number 7. And right now, Arial Arise have to be very careful because Makers have gone for a very forward extension over towards security. And they're going to have a lot to deal with over here, but a blitz is just in the building. Epic just runs right in and Giddy's not ready for it. He did some damage, sure. That's the opening pick going the way of Arial Arise before Packer with a quick trade back onto Brios. Packer's first kill of the map, mind you, is onto the one player from Arial Arise that has been consistently performing throughout the entire map. That's a crucial blow if you've ever seen one.
Makes his 1 kill count. As we see now, like, have a bit of trouble getting inside of the building here. The Blitz is scary, but he's far less scary when you know that he has weak knees and needs a knee replacement, with Epic only being on 15 HP. There is the potential for Snake to get a jump kill here. So far not going for it, however. Nalek is going to get Packer off of the board, which with Epic being down is a 3 versus 3 for us right now. But Bino makes sure that doesn't come into fruition, gets the double kill, Snake gets one onto Adam, and we find ourselves in a 2 versus 2 to close things out.
Yeah, we're just halfway through the round. A lot of action happening between these two teams. But I would say Makers are very much the ones that come out on top here. Snake only has 20 HP left. And they've done a pretty good job of burning out a lot of this time. Now, Bino and Tristan just look to sit back and wait to try and force Arial Arise to come to them. And that's exactly what they will do. And it's over in a matter of seconds. Final 2 kills go the way of Makers. And it's 6-1. Grand final point for Makers.
I love that crossfire that Bino and Tristan have there. Is Bino, with the SMG-11, with how close range that is, that DPS is massive in that close fight. And then Tristan has his walk-in from office, as they know that's where Arial have to come from. And especially with the fact that they know Snake's going to be on super low HP, they're not worried about it. They trust each other to hold those crosses and to make sure that no one gets into the site unnoticed. And it ends up being the thing that secures them that round, along with, honestly, I'm going to describe it as apathy towards the Blitz almost. They weren't afraid of it at all. And even though I believe it was Giddy wasn't able to kill the Blitz in the beginning part of the round, he got him down to 15 HP. And like I was saying, when you know you can shoot that Blitz in the knees as he tries to kill you, that makes him a lot less intimidating, or even just a nitro cell if that was what they had, or an impact grenade. And when they down that Blitz, they force someone to go pick him up, and that's when Bino strikes. He waits for the opportune point and aggresses onto it. And like you said, semi-final or grand final point for $15,000.
Attacker's objective is to locate a bomb and defuse it.
Ali, I have a question for you.
Yeah,
Do you like numbers?
I love numbers.
Oh, well, I've got some numbers for you.
Oh
Since
boy.
round number 7 of the last map of Consulate, up until this point, Makers have gone 11-1 in round count. Pure dominance by this team. And it just goes back to the point that this Makers roster hasn't really had anybody challenge them to this point that isn't T1. They are just unstoppable. I mean, they beat Wildcard back in Element. Like, they're beating T1 teams. They are proving that they are such a good roster that deserves a ton of respect. Now, we're down to a 4v4 in this round, as there's been some pretty good action going the way of Arial Arise, and it'll get better for them as Adam, now off the board up above, gives Arial Arise a break that they so desperately needed.
Great player to get off the board there. They have the Blitz as well, which gets more powerful with the fact that they have the man advantage. Giddy's in a very uncomfortable position up top here, although he is going to try to find one. He does successfully find one, drops the diffuser with Nihilek, but he is going to get away. Tristan as well going to take out that Blitz. And everything we said was going well has started to fall apart for Arial Rise. All left up to Snake and Uzi. Certainly possible, but highly improbable, given the fact that their crux of this round is gone, and neither of them have the diffuser yet. 2 available pings are there for Deimos, however, so he can make some magic work. But still, that man advantage isn't going to help them at all, and the time is ticking away, and they don't have the diffuser still.
Makers just 2 kills away, now 1 kill away from a rematch with Fluffy Aimers. Uzi with a nice shot, but it's all for naught. As it's pure domination by Makers in this semifinal matchup. They will play Fluffy Aimers, or like you said, the lion's share of that $15,000 Summer Series prize pool.
Yeah, I mean, when you win the grand final, it's got to be at least $2. I mean, I haven't won a grand final, but I'm assuming you get more than $2. And last time they played Fluffy Hammers at a grand final, they won 3-0, I believe it was, in the best of 5 in Xenon recently. So if they can continue that streak, it's looking pretty good for them. If I'm Makers, I'm feeling pretty confident. That Consulate left a little bit to be desired from what we'd normally expect from Makers, but nonetheless, a very good look.
Most definitely. I mean, you can pretty much just chalk that map up to a slow start. So once we saw them really wake up, specifically Adam, once Adam woke up, that game was over. Like we said, 5 rounds in a row to end out Consulate, 7-1 there on border. If I'm Fluffy Aimers, I mean, sure, you want to get your revenge against Makers for the XGS Grand Final, which was close in some cases, but also just Makers proved in that game that they were just a step above Fluffy Aimers in that game. You have to be scared, considering that while sure time has passed for Fluffy Aimers to be able to get better, Makers have also been able to get better and get more comfortable. And I fear for their chances whenever that game happens.
I do as well. That being said, though, that's it from us. No interviews for us, unfortunately, so we're not going to get to see what the players think. But it's been fun. It's been Nomical and I on the casting booth tonight, but we're going to send it off and let you lovely people go to bed and have a wonderful night.